Hello, everybody. Welcome to Transform Tuesday. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm in charge of documentation, and I'm joined by Scott Allen, who is a genius with graphics and everything at Alpha Software. And today we're going to be talking about the Transform programming language. This is a continuation of a series we've been doing for a while. But before I get into that, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box, the GoToWebinar panel, or send them to tfservice at alphasoftware.com anytime throughout the week so that we can answer those questions during the session. So before we get started here, I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to ask Scott, can you see my screen?
I can. Looking
All
good.
right. All right. So I'm just going to mute you. All right. So welcome. This week, we are talking about GPS and location within the Transform programming language, and specifically how you can capture location information. So we already have a way within a Transform form to capture a location, and that's using the location field, which when you interact with it, captures your current location. But there's also a way to capture location using TPL. And in TPL, we have a set of functions for capturing the GPS location of the device. And those set of functions are called GPS start, GPS position, and GPS stop. Now, just briefly about why we have these three functions. When capturing location, the way we've done it is the system will periodically pull the device for its current location every 5 minutes or however often you configure it to pull, which will drain the battery rather quickly if you do it a lot. So we've created a three set of functions here that allow you to turn on GPS tracking when you need it so that you can capture the location, and then turn it off when you don't need it anymore to ensure that the user's device doesn't run out of battery while you're using it. And in general, if you have a form that needs to capture a location, we recommend putting the GPS start in the onload event, which fires when the form is first opened, and then the GPS stop in the onFinish, which is when the form is closed, goes away. The GPS position function is the function that actually gets the latitude and longitude that was recently recorded. It also records the altitude, and it gives you some accuracy information as to how accurate that recording was. Just be aware, capturing GPS information, the user's location is not perfect. Errors can occur. This is just how GPS calculations work in general. But in addition to those sort of imprecise errors, other errors can occur. So in addition to capturing all that information, there's also an error value that gets returned, which you'll want to check to make sure nothing has gone wrong, such as if you forget to set the, if you forget to call GPS start, you're going to get an error that it wasn't initialized. So if you check error should be blank if nothing has gone wrong. And from there, you can go through and read all the values out of the object that gets returned from the function. In addition to the GPS start, stop, and position functions, we also have one called lat long distance. This computes the distance between two latitude and longitude coordinates. There are two versions of this function. One takes a lat long, two sets of latitude and longitude values as individual parameters. So you have your latitude 1, longitude 1, latitude 2, longitude 2, or you can pass them in as two strings that contain the lat long separated by a comma. This is also an approximation function. It has some assumptions, so it's not perfect. You're not going to get a perfectly calculated distance between two latitude and longitude positions, but it's fairly close. And for big things such as like wanting to just check that a user is within maybe a kilometer of an area that you want them to check into, or even 500 meters, this will be okay. The margin of error is about 5% on that. So that's what we've got in functions. I'm going to get right into a live demo here and show you guys how this stuff works. So we'll put that away here, and we'll go look
Right
at
meow.
Alpha Transform. Right, meow. Yes, Scott. For those of you that don't know, that was Thurston Waffles. He's my favorite internet cat right now. So here I am in Alpha Transform, transform.alphasoftware.com. In the designer here, I've set up two forms today for today's demo. One is called GPS Demo with Errors. This is an example to show you what happens if you forget to start the GPS service. And the other one is GPS Demo. This one actually works. And if we take a look at the form itself, it's identical in both of them. The only thing that's different is the backend TPL. We have a field called location. The name of this field is office. This is hard coded to the Alpha Software HQ in Burlington, Massachusetts. It's a read-only field. And the purpose of having this field here is just so that I can do some calculations with this button. When it gets clicked, it's going to capture my current location and then compute the distance, and also display some of the information that was returned by that GPS function in these fields, including my location, which is a location field, not just a text field, but the rest of these are just text fields, including errors down here. If there are no errors, errors will be blank. There won't be any information in there. So I do a little bit of tweaking on the back end there just to make sure that we understand what happens when that happens. So if we go look at the TPL for this form, and just to review for those of you who may have forgotten, when you first open up a form, this advanced section might be collapsed. So you need to expand it. You need to make sure that enable custom code for this form type is set to yes, which will allow you to click this edit custom code. And then it'll open up the TPL editor. And here is where, over here on the side here, on the left is where I've added code to 3 events, one for the load, one for the finished, and one for the button event for my distance button. So let's take a look at the top level load and finished handlers here. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Oop, that's reset. So that hopefully people can read what the text is in here. So here's the onload. This gets called when the form is opened. And all it does is call this GPS start function. Excuse me. And if we go over here on the right-hand side, there's this function list section. You can find this GPS start function and everything else in the device area. So if I click device, and I'll minimize this here. Here in device, we see our GPS position, start, stop, and our two latitude and long distance functions, and the variations. They both do the same thing. One just takes those set of coordinates as 4 parameters. The other one takes it as 2 parameters. So if we look at GPS stop, here I've just, or GPS, not stop, GPS start. You'll see here it actually takes 3 parameters. If you don't specify those, we just use the system defaults. But those parameters are set, let you set the accuracy, how often to pull for a position, and how often to watch. So period seconds is how often to pull hard stop if we don't detect that the user has moved a significant distance to justify capturing the GPS position again. That's what this watch max is. And if you read down here, we explain it. But that's basically sort of a way to like guarantee that the information that we capture is accurate to as recent as reasonable. So if you actually want to have their location as of 5 minutes ago, then it will be captured. And then the accuracy is just how precise we want to capture that. For higher accuracy, it might take a little bit longer to pull the location. So a more accurate location will take a longer time to calculate from the GPS. And that's just querying the hardware, asking it like, hey, I want my position, I want it to be this accurate. And finished just calls stop. Stop doesn't really do anything particularly fancy other than to stop pulling the device. We'll put it in the finished. Finished is called when the form is closed. you navigate away from it. And then all that polling, I've added into the button, which we'll call this GPS position function. So let's go take a look at that now. If we went back to our form design, that distance to office button, this is the button that we're talking about. And when that button is tapped by the user, it calls GPS position, which returns the last position captured. That could have been just now, a few seconds ago, or it could have been almost the full wait for polling time. It could have been 5 minutes ago. If they've moved a little bit in that period of time, it may not be where they are now. But what this returns is that latitude and longitude information. It also returns some accuracy. How accurate, like, is it within 6 meters? Is it within 600 meters? The altitude vertically from sea level, basically, how accurate that is. And then the air status. And your latitude and longitude values, notice up here, they're returned in two formats. One is as separate individual values, and the one combined with the decimal places rounded to 6 instead of, I think it's like 8 or 11. It's quite long, these two. Anyway, if I can make that a little bit wider, get that to stop wrapping. So what this function does is it calls GPS position, it puts it in a variable called position, and then I check error. I check to see if it's blank. If it's blank, then I want to put there were no errors in my error message box, just so I have some sort of visual confirmation that this worked and I didn't run into any problems. If I were to make a coding mistake here by accident, it may fail, but I wouldn't know. So having that there sort of helps reassure for me that I've gotten the position, I've moved on to the next step. And then the rest of this is just calculating the distance and then setting our location and some of the accuracy information that we got out of that variable. The distance is calculated here between the position in office and then the lat long position returned by this function. We call that long distance. And then I have this round to the nearest whole number because this returns a decimal value of meters. And looking at that rounded was a little easier than something with 5 decimal places. So that's what this is here. It's rounding the value to the nearest meter, and then I concatenate that together with the word meters so that the distance field has some value so we know what kind of distance we're looking at. And then we set up the rest of the fields here. We set current location to the current position. And I did this just so that you guys could see a different way of pulling the latitude and longitude out of this variable. The ampersand is concatenation for strings. The location field is latitude comma longitude value. And then these last three are just text fields. I put accuracy, altitude, and the altitude accuracy in there. Now, if this had an error in it, what it's going to do is go down here, and it's going to put the error message in my error message field and then set everything else to blank. So that's all there is in this function. I do want to show you the other form that we have in here. This one is with errors. And the error in this one is if we go look at load, I've commented out GPS start. This doesn't actually get run. It never gets turned on, so it never enables location capture for TPL. So I'd like to show this on my phone, but I'm realizing I forgot to start my screen share for my phone, so I'm going to do that now. Get that set up.
While Sarah's getting that set up, I'll remind you if you have any questions, please enter them in. And also, if you have questions throughout the week, please send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com.
See if I can get this here. There we go. All set up. Thanks for waiting. Make that nice and big so you guys can see it. So here is transform. Alpha transform. I apologize. I did a demo last week on alpha launch and I get the two all mixed up now. Anyway, if I go in here and let's take a look at this demo with errors first. Here's the form on my device. All these fields down here are blank, and if I tap distance to office, I see this error at the bottom. It says not started, and what that means to me is that I forgot to call GPS start. So this isn't going to work. I would have to go back and update my form and republish it with the fix. But this other form that I have in here, the one that does call start on the start, on the load function, if I can find it, looks the same, but now when I tap distance to office, it captures my location. It shows me that distance is this nice little 70,932 meters, standard distance units, United States, and then how accurate I was within 28 meters of accuracy of my location capture. Altitude is 33, I believe that's meters, and then the accuracy there. And then finally, we say at the bottom, there weren't any errors, so this is all working. So that's my demo. If you want to see another demo of using the GPS functions, I did one about a year ago, a couple months ago, and that one shows how to capture both the time and the location as sort of like a clock in, clock out type situation in a form if you wanted to capture somebody starting on site and ending on site. So it's a possible way to apply these. So I'll reset that to 0. Go back to the designer here. So that's the whole demo. There's not much with location capture and transform, but you can do a lot with it. So suppose I'll go check to see if we have any questions.
We do. We had a question that was asked, what is a good, and by good we mean vetted, screencast app for iOS connected to a Windows 10 computer?
I don't know if it's good and well vetted, but I use Lonely Screen to do AirPlay, Aircast, whatever, from my device to the monitor. Well, if there are no other questions, we're going to wrap it up. By all means, send your questions to us at tfservice@alphasoftware.com if at any time during the next week you have any questions. We should be back next week. I am not sure how many more, actually, let me pull up the documentation for this. I am unsure how many more presentations we're going to do on TPL here because we've basically gone through all of it. We've gone through the whole language, and now, we're digging into some of the built-in functions just to show you guys how you could use them. Maybe during the break between now and our next webinar, if you have any functions in here that you've seen that you'd like to see a demo of, go ahead and send them to us. I'd be interested to find out what things you guys want to do with TPL as well, and maybe we could tackle that. I think we might take a look at using we might look at Ajax, and we'll probably also take a peek at our date and math functions to see if there's anything in there that might be worth covering in a little more depth. But other than that, excited to see you guys next week, and I hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.